Now, a few people have been in touch over the past couple of days saying, hey, Paul, can you try to give us an idea about COVID, Australia and the rest of the world? Gladly. And thanks to the Financial Review, they came up with 17 different graphs, don't worry, I'm not about to show you them all, about how Australia compares when it comes to COVID. Raw numbers, straight out there, okay? Now, yes, you can spin the numbers if you want to, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, based on per capita, population, blah, blah. Here's the numbers. Have a look at this, right? Australia has recorded fewer infections than the rest of the world. Now, sure, it got a little bit crazy a little bit earlier this year, but as did the rest of the world with a little thing called Omicron. We've done an incredible job. The death toll, by the way, regardless of whether it was Omicron, Delta or anything else, is an absolute sliver compared to other countries like the UK, the US and all the rest of it. Yes, more population, but still the actual rate is what matters here. This matters. Now, I know there are lots of people who were banging on all the time about Sweden. Good luck to you. Fine, I understand the point you were making. Sweden has 10 million people but 17,000 COVID deaths. We've got 25 million and 3,000. Every one of them a tragedy, no question about it, but perspective is often important. And economy. You want to talk about what's the federal election about? This is what it's about. Do I trust the person in charge to have the smarts to get us back to always being better than we were before? Well, that's exactly the story of Australian employment over a long period of time, but certainly after the pandemic. You can see where the drop was in 2020. You can see how high things are now. More people have a job today than had at the start of the pandemic. Something to think about. Gary Hardgrave, of course, our host here on Sky News. You can see him on Friday nights and so regularly throughout the week. Erica Betts is the Liberal senator from South Australia, or the Tasmanian senator who is a Liberal. I always have to be very precise, but I apologise. I was thinking ahead of myself here. Gary, this is what's important, right? Is that the summer of sooking is what I talked about it. I talked about the summer of complaining and whinging and moaning that had gone on for some cause, but for a lot of cause. I tell you what, when you look at the poor people of Tonga, where you don't even know if their part of the island exists, and we were whinging because we had to sit in a queue for, 3 hours. Not fun to be able to be told whether we did or didn't have the Wu flu or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Paul, Happy New Year to you, and Erica Betts, happy birthday, mate. I wouldn't work on my birthday. You are a great Australian to be working on your birthday, I got to say. You're looking younger every time I see you, mate. But look, Paul, you're right. I mean, the point is that federal elections are always about the economy, and who do you trust on these things? And the fundamentals of Australia are unbelievably strong, unbelievably strong. And, you know, there's still, though, hundreds of thousands of people who are working very, very hard to stay unemployed in this country at the same time when we're trying to find people to actually do the work. Now, look, you know, Australia is rich enough, wealthy enough to actually put itself in hock to get us over the kind of bump and grind we've been in. But this kind of summer of stupidity, you can call it the summer of sookie, that's not a bad line, but the summer of stupidity that has been going on at the political class and indeed the media class. I mean, it's time to put that to bed and just look at what we've got going for us. We are now the most vaccinated country in the world. We've got people who, 95% of us, 93% of us are double vaccinated in this country. That's why we're actually getting through this Omicron thing in better strength. It's caused enormous hurt. And I think probably if you haven't rat tested yourself, you don't know you got this thing in many cases. But of course, if you're sick, go and get yourself tested. But we've just got to get on with life, Paul. We've got to get on with the business of being Australia again, because countries like, you know, Tonga are relying on us. Countries in our region are relying on us to be the very best Australia that we can be. But putting us to work is better than putting us to welfare, and that's the political dimension of this election year. It's either work or welfare. What are you going to vote for? Pretty simple.
And Eric, you would have seen what Albo had to say today. And look, obviously the extreme majority of Australians were, you know, holidaying, working, or couldn't give a tuppence, but they end up reading about it, right? But the reality was incredible vagueness, and then when there was any level of specificity, it was Bill Shorten's climate plan and Julia Gillard's Building the Education Revolution and Kevin Rudd's NBN. He's trying to go the greatest hits of some of the worst decisions Labor governments or oppositions have made.
Well, what a great summary, Paul. Thank you very much. I think we ought to take that into our party as a very good advertising campaign. But look, more seriously, this is indicative of how much at sea Labor is. there is no vision, there is no real idea how to run the country. Indeed, the Shadow Treasurer said that the one test that the government had to survive was the unemployment test. And of course, the unemployment figures are now way beyond expectation. The Labor Party has no feather to fly with in relation to unemployment. So the big issue that Jim Chalmers and Labor said they would judge us on is now out the window for them. They're scrambling around. They can't run a negative campaign in relation to matters economic. And at the end of the day, I think that's what people realise, that to have a good health system, education system, building the infrastructure, you need a good economy. Who is best placed to run a good economy for Australia? Who's got the runs on the board? If I might say, Josh Frydenberg is doing a fantastic job, and the unemployment figures are indicative of that.
Well, and of course, remember, what did the Labor Party say we had to do during the pandemic? We had to bribe people to get vaccinated, and we had to buy Virgin Airlines. Okay, that's what they would have done, and that they were wasting billions from opposition. All right, happy to help.